Okay, yep, we're ready. Hi, everybody. My name is Theresa Derwin, and I do a write-on column for Joe Meinhardt at Crystal Lake Publishing for his Patreon page. Today, I'm really pleased to have Lee Murray, who I think is a three-time nominated Bram Stoker Award winner. She writes fabulous horror as well as some wonderful monster fiction, very much in the kind of vein of Godzilla meets Aliens. The series started with Into the Mist, is it? Is that the
Yes,
first
that's
one,
it.
Lee?
That's the first one.
That is. Okay. What we're going to chat about today, really, it's going to be a bit of an informal chat, but of course I wanted to start us off. And we're going to talk about mentoring and mentorship and how important that is, as well as bringing in more diverse mentors across the horror field. And really, some of you might already know that Leah's been mentoring for many years, but she won the Mentor of the Year award this year for the Horror Writers Association. So, Lee, first of all, do you want to tell us a little bit about some of the mentoring that you've done?
Well, thanks for having me, Crystal Lake, as featured author, and thank you very much, Theresa, for doing this interview. Yeah, mentoring is something I feel very strongly about, and I have been mentoring, I think, for 10 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, for a number of different organisations. But how I got into it really was that I was mentored myself. So the New Zealand Society of Authors has a program, a mentorship program, which they run every year. And you have to apply to win one because they're paid, you know, the mentors are paid.
Yeah.
And so I applied, you know, didn't know what I was really doing. And I applied, and I was actually paired with Graham Lay, who's an iconic New Zealand writer. He wrote he's written about 60 books, and he's really well known here locally. Writes YA and also writes also for adults, and incredibly good writer. And he was the North and South magazine books editor for many, many years, so really knows his stuff. So I was paired with him, and he's a lovely, lovely man, and learned so much from him from that program. Oh my goodness! I mean, I turned up, and this is the little book I wrote. It's called Misplaced, and it is about, well, it was basically inspired is not perhaps the right word, but one of my very dear friends went missing in France many years ago, I think 15 or 16 years ago now, and she was never found. And so, she left 3 children and a husband, and she's never been found. So this was kind of my way of you know, writing some closure, if you like, into the fact that my friend's never been found. So anyway, so I wrote this little book, and he was just incredibly inspirational and just so supportive and encouraging. And I still contact him now, even now when I take a new direction with my writing, because mentorship is forever. It is never just for the 3 months or the 1 year or however long it's supposed to be.
Life,
It's for life, yeah. And as a result of that, afterwards the New Zealand Society of Authors, you know, asked me for feedback and said, was I interested in the program and what had I got from it? And I said, you know, I'd really like to be involved on the other side of the equation. You know, I'd learned so much. And they said, well, let's give it a year or two until you've got some bit more experience. And so I did that, and then I came back to them. And I did a first mentorship, and they kind of checked and said, okay, yep, we think you're adding value, which is great. So then I started becoming a mentor, and I've done that ever since. But I also convened the whole program at some point, so did the selection process. So I've been on the selection panel and also ran the whole program, sort of thing.
Wow,
so so I've kind of been on all ends of it, which has really been wonderful. So I think I'm the only person that's ever done that. So I've kind of got the whole process under my belt. And then, of course, I've gone on to run that program with New Zealand Spec-Fic authors, and I've been involved with the Horror Writers Association and Young New Zealand Writers, which is a program that I also co-founded with my colleague Piper Mejia, for youth writers, and of course they need so much help. And
that's
support.
Fantastic. If you can get them while they're young, as we say, you know, you're halfway there, aren't you?
Yeah, but it's just honestly, Teresa, and I mean, you must know this from being selected as the HWA scholarship winner
Yeah,
last year. So I mean, just how much support and just how much it means to have someone else in your corner rooting for you and believing
yeah,
in your work, and it's just it's the sort of thing that launches careers and relationships that last for lifetimes. I just cannot speak more highly of it. And the other thing is that I'm not very good at promo.
yeah.
I'm really crap at promo. So to me, service is a great way of getting your name visible. I mean, I've just had so much, support and yeah, I don't know. I've got so much out of being HWA Mentor of the Year, and for what,
Yeah.
and just because people have seen my name associated with that program, and that's a lovely thing to be recognized
Known
for.
for, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's a kind of form of promo, if you like, which is just a kind of, I don't know, an added bonus or a surprise that comes from being involved.
Absolutely is, yeah. I mean, I got my my scholarship tail end of 2019, and I've done so much since that. I've learnt so much. And when I met Christopher Golden at Edgeley 2019, wouldn't it? I was incredibly surprised that he knew me and seemed really pleased to meet me in real life. And I was like, oh my God, Christopher Golden knows me. And it's because I'd had mentors along the way that taught me not just techniques to do my writing, but how to be a good person, if that doesn't sound too cliche, how to share with others, how to welcome others, how to encourage more diversity. That for me was what I gained a lot of through the people I've met through my informal mentors. And I don't know whether you know, I do the Sears table for the HWA most months, and that for me was discovering that side of trying to mentor people and be mentored and kind of learn about new writers. That for me was one of the most exciting and important things. I mean, we were talking earlier informally about how important it is that with mentors we bring in new diverse people, we bring in writers of colour, we bring in diverse backgrounds, diverse genders, all of these things, because after all, that is what we want to see more of in the horror community. I mean, what do you think, Lee?
I totally agree, and I do think that it's that having diversity in terms of mentorship means that you're not having that certain gaze, that same
Yeah.
gaze, that same all the time on people's work. We need to have these different perspectives. It was interesting when I don't know if you know that Genevieve Flynn and I put together this book called Black Cranes this year.
Yes,
Which
absolutely.
is Asian horror writers with monsters, and I'm so proud of
Fantastic.
this book. And actually, it was interesting because Nadia Bulkin, when we asked her to come on board, and Nadia, she's a fabulous writer,
Yeah.
and she said, but are we talking editors who have some perspective, in this area, the Asian? And we said, yes, we're both Asian, Asian Western writers, and yes, we do have some understanding. And she said, oh, that means a lot to me, because she didn't have to explain herself, that we would have
Yes.
some feel, we would be open to the kind of perspectives that she was putting in the work. And wow, the people in this book it just blew us away. And I think that's really important. And I do I do have this discussion with the New Zealand Society of Authors quite a lot, because we
Yeah,
do get, you know, Maori and Pacifica writers coming through, and we actually need more Maori and Pacifica mentors in order to extend and amplify those voices, because those stories are important, and we need to, you know, we need that diversity. And I think the horror
absolutely.
community is incredibly welcoming and inclusive. In general, I mean, obviously there are some small factions, and there always are in every community,
Yes,
but
yes.
in the horror community, as far as I'm concerned, I found it to be extremely welcoming, and so the possibility is there, and I think perhaps more so in any other community, because horror is
Yeah,
already subversive, you know.
it
You
is.
know?
It is.
It's the genre for that. So and I think the Sears table is an incredibly important program. I check that every time the HWA
It's
newsletter
wonderful.
comes
I
out.
mean, every
Yeah, I
month I tend to
discover.
pick up just,
Yeah,
sorry, yeah, I'll pick up at least one book from that recommended list every month, you know, just to kind of find new authors, because who doesn't love finding new horror authors or new
I know.
genre authors?
Totally.
It's amazing. And
Totally.
I also
Yeah.
think, as members of the Horror Rights Association, and myself as a scholarship recipient, yourself as a mentor, we kind of have a responsibility to stand up and say it's wrong when we see something that's racist or objectionable, and also to say, oh, look at this amazing author I've discovered, recently discovered Eugene Bacon. She sent me this
She's amazing.
beautiful
She's amazing. Yes.
chapbook, graphic pictures and flash fiction that's incredibly dark and also beautiful and lyrical. And just meeting her virtually and discovering her and her work, I feel that it's enriched me. Hope it makes me a better writer, but also gives me the chance to share and go, look at this lovely work.
Yeah.
It's great. And I think that we have a duty to do that.
We do, but also, and I think Eugene is the kind of person who's also doing the things that we're talking about. I mean,
She's
she's with
wonderful.
Borealis as their reviews editor, and she's written a book about speculative fiction,
She has,
and
yeah,
she's very supportive in the Australian, Australasian horror community. So yeah, so that's exactly the kind of person that we need to see moving forward and being,
exactly.
in those roles. I love her work. I have edited a couple of her stories actually in previous things. So it's always lovely to discover these new voices, and she has a very
Yes,
unique and a very sort of lyrical way, very
it
kind
is.
of,
It's beautiful. And
lovely
she
writing.
she can put so much in the flash fiction that I've read of hers, so much into just punchy, short pieces that have a marvelous impact. I don't remember the exact piece, but it's the one about the man walking away with the child in her
Ah, yes.
recent chapbook piece, and that's like wow. But it's
Yeah, no,
it's
I think
fantastic.
that's exactly the point, isn't it? These are the kinds of voices that we should be, that we can nurture through these kinds of programs, which is excellent. And that's not to say that that the work that's out there isn't already good. It's just that these are, we're able to include these new
Yeah,
voices.
it's broadening what we've got, welcoming more voices into the arena, as it were. I mean, from
Yeah, I
sorry,
think
carry on.
no, no. I just One of the things I think is interesting is that there's never enough mentors, because
Yes,
it's lots of work and it's free work, and it really is sometimes quite tough.
yeah,
It's time that that's taken away from your own writing. I mean, I have to say, I always learn a lot. It doesn't matter who I work with, I always learn something. But that said, it is time consuming, and it does take you a little bit away from your own writing. And I currently have 5, I think, mentees on the go.
Wow.
That's right. I have one from the New Zealand Society of Authors that finished in last month, but it's still going because we're not finished.
Of course, yeah.
And I've got one in Australia who's writing a poetry collection, so that's associated with a university. A couple here with the New Zealand Society, with a couple of other organisations. So yeah, I've got quite a few going on at the moment. One with the Wright Murray residency, which is a residency that I instigated with a colleague here in New Zealand, because there is nothing for speculative writers. So yeah, but I think that what we could do is just sort of call out to Crystal Lake patrons, if you are a writer and you've written a couple of novels, or maybe you've got a bit of a background in short story writing, you may be someone who you might not think of yourself as being at a level to be able to mentor someone else, but it depends on who they get coming in. And if they've got a first-time writer, then yes, you probably have something to offer if they're putting together their first short stories and they've never put something out for publication. So the thing to do is to let the convener know that these are the skills I feel I have, that I'm confident in. You may find that there is something that you can offer, because there are never enough mentors. And just because you don't think that you're maybe not a New York Times best-selling author, I'm certainly not a New York Times best-selling author, but there are still areas that you might have skills in that you could offer to someone else. They might be someone who's breaking into screenwriting, and you have a screenwriting background, but and so there are always opportunities, and mentorship is something that is it's wonderful. Those relationships last forever, and they're really powerful relationships, and just the opportunities that you're offering someone else, that just the idea of having someone else in your corner who believes in your work, who wants to see you succeed, and who isn't your mother, is just...
Oh God, yes.
It's just incredibly empowering, and that is something, and both sides of the equation are empowering. Because you've got someone else who, when you're the mentor, and they're looking to you and they're saying, hey, how do I do this? And if you've got an answer for them, that's incredibly empowering. Like, hey, I've learned this. And also just the discussions are very valuable. I always learn things, oh, this is how you do it. And just being the sneak peek at someone else's process.
Oh, that's great fun. Yeah.
It is. So anyway, Theresa, why don't you just tell me a little bit about how the scholarship has because obviously it's been affected by COVID and your plans have had to go. So tell me, how's it been going, and what's actually happened?
Well, it's been, I'd say, ironically, I've submitted very little in the last year and a half, because I've actually been learning so much. Between the scholarship and at the same time starting my master's in creative writing, it's been exhausting. It's been incredibly rewarding, and I do feel that I've gone up a level in my writing and in a lot of the things that I do. I've took part in particular in the Horror Writers University online, which they recently ran some sessions. Because of my health, I was only able to virtually attend to and attend another by email. That was Linda D. Addison, who sent me some work on poetry, and when I'm ready I can send her a piece to get the feedback from. I did the session with Jonathan Maybury, and I did the session with Tim Waggoner, and it was incredible. You learn so much. You're making copious amounts of notes. It also strangely feels like you're in a room with a couple of friends, because there are a bunch of you there. You've got the chat ongoing, and there's always something really useful that you learn, but it also it's just incredibly enjoyable, because especially right now while we're isolated, to have a chance to talk to like-minded people. So, I mean, the scholarship paid for that. It's also paid for the forthcoming Chillicon that was supposed to be StokerCon like a couple of years ago, which when that happens, I've got myself a slot booked for an auction where I'll be selling lots of my collector's editions to fund a trip to America. And the plan, of course, is to go and learn from a lot of I'm very much into monsters, and in your face horror is very much my thing. I love Christmas horror, Halloween horror. I very much love the visceral side of it, but I also like to look at emotions and trauma and that kind of thing. And I want to connect with writers and publishers and editors over there and build up my network, because let's face it, a lot of it is about that. But also talk to people about their work, find out what worked for them, what didn't. From the same point of view, it's bought me some periodicals which I've subscribed to, in particular Black Static. I don't know if it's as well known over there, but it's in the UK scene, it's very well known. It was one of those target markets I've attempted 3 times, obviously not got in yet, but now I understand why, if that makes sense, through dipping into the work and looking at the writers and what kind of things they're doing, plus the column that Linda Rucker does and Stephen Volk occasionally writes, and seeing there's always an article in that piece that kind of speaks to me and will teach me something along the way.
Yep.
I bought quite a few of the horror writers' textbooks themselves. Plus, also the first year I bought the best of for every year.
Yep.
From Ellen Datlow, Stephen Jones, Paula Guaran. Basically, I have a theory that if they're in the best of and it's by a reputable editor, then obviously it's the best of the best, if that makes sense, without sounding like somebody from Men in Black.
Yeah,
not
that's
that,
true.
But you have
they also have their own, those, right, I mean, they're fabulous editors, but they have their own taste. And so, just, if it doesn't appear in the best of, doesn't necessarily mean it isn't good. And
no, of course not.
But it's a good starting point. Absolutely great.
That's what I did year 1, because the idea was, if I can look at the techniques that they're using or the things that they're doing in those, then I know what works for the bigger markets. I was thinking financially, I'll be honest.
Yes.
My brain is thinking, if I want to make a career out of this, because that's what I'm here for. I'm not doing a hobby here. This is my life. Then I want to see what the major markets are taking in. So that's where I spread my wings.
Right.
But as I've become involved in the Sears table, then I've seen so many kind of wonderful writers out there, and a lot of it has gone into that. And also, I don't know if you know Brad. I mean, you're on the Brad C. Hudson.
Yes,
He's
I know
been
Brad.
incredible. He administers the award from the financial accounting aspect, but he's always been a go-to, same as Marge Simons. It like opened up this doorway to speak to people, to be able to have the confidence. And it also forced me, from a kind of confidence point of view, to say, right, you've messed about, it's time to go for the big ones, and to try more difficult subjects, more difficult types of storytelling. I've learnt screenplay for the first time ever. I'm finishing off my first screenplay next year. I've been dabbling with trauma-based poetry for an assignment at the moment. I'm writing in genres and spectrums and styles and methods that I would never have imagined a year ago. that more than anything is what the scholarship has given me.
Oh,
The
it's so
confidence and the
exciting.
encouragement to do it. It's changed my life without sounding cheesy. I would not. I mean, I'm in a book with Clive Barker, for God's sake, and
I
that
know,
just
it's
kind of
amazing.
blew me
It's
away.
fantastic.
But this right now is the most exciting thing that I've been doing, which is interviewing
Interviewing.
authors. It's improved my interviewing techniques, made me think broader when it comes to what can I ask them, not just, oh, where do your ideas come from, which is, I think, what we all start when we ask questions of writers. It's got me thinking deeper, and with every interview I learn. And
Absolutely.
it's all building up to finding my voice, I think, is where it all comes down to,
But
and finding
actually,
what I have to say.
I think it's really interesting because you talked about, starting with Christopher Golden, and then going to the HWA university, which was fantastic. I managed all of them. I
Oh
didn't catch
yeah,
Linda's talk, unfortunately, but Tim's was great. Jonathan's was fantastic. No, I really, really enjoyed that series,
yeah,
and definitely the content was fantastic. But interesting that you should talk about the interviewing side, because to me, I think that Christopher Golden and Jonathan Mabry, Linda Addison, Tim Wagner, they all have this act like a writer,
yeah,
which is Jonathan's signature talk. Act like a writer, be this person, be the writer that you admire. So be the
yes,
person who is giving, and who gives back to the community, and who is magnanimous, and shares their love of horror, and shares their knowledge. And that's the writer I want to be. And
yeah,
already you're doing it. You're interviewing people. You're teasing out that information for other people. That's the way. To me, that's a way forward in writing
yeah,
that can help you build a career. Because as Jonathan says very often, I can't write enough books. Mind you, he writes 10,000 words a
oh
day.
God, yeah,
But he says, I can't write enough books to keep you all entertained all the time, So when you're not reading me, you need to be reading all these other wonderful people.
yes,
Um,
yes,
and, and so it's not a competition, there's
of
space,
course.
you
There
know.
is space. It's a wonderful genre with lots of space for so many writers. And when somebody new comes into it, it's very exciting.
It is. But interesting too that you should say that you're trying these new venues, because you're braver than me. I really have not tried. I really have not tried the big venues. And now I'm quite a slow writer, but actually now I'm not actually even submitting, because
Yeah,
because I've had editors contact me and say, we like what you've done, and can you write us something? And so
yeah, that's great.
over the last few months, I've had about 10 commissions, and so, which is really nice. And it's
Oh,
a sort of,
yes,
it's just so empowering to be asked. And, there's no guarantee, of course, when they ask you to submit, because you've
of course.
got to hit
I
the
think
mark
that's a
as well.
popular misconception that
Yeah.
I'm in because I was invited. I think a lot
Yeah,
of people
but it is
mixed up
very
with that.
exciting, and sometimes a little bit harder to write on demand. That's
Yeah,
actually been a new skill for me, because you know they give you the pitch and you think, well, this is an interesting, oh, sorry about that noise, it's my Facebook pinging. But they give you the concept, and it doesn't always mean that you're either going to come up with an idea that fits that concept, or that your view of that concept is going to
will
marry
match
with
theirs.
what
Yeah,
the other things they have coming in, from the bigger name people, of
of
course.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But one of the things that really stands me in good stead is that whole New Zealand concept. I often say, would you like something a little bit New Zealandy? And they, oh, yes, please, because that's
oh,
not something we see a lot of. And so that little niche, I think, gives me a bit of an angle. And I hope it sort of is a spearhead for other New Zealand writers to get into, you know, because we'd like to know more about New Zealand fiction and New Zealand horror and that feel, which is a little bit different from, you know, what we're seeing elsewhere. So
I think it's terrific. Black Cranes tapping into the Asian authors, and the recent one I've seen, a science fiction one, I can't remember the name, but it's a lot of African authors who have submitted to that. And these things, I mean, make it much more interesting. And it's also a way that we can travel while sitting here stuck at home.
Totally. And this year we've needed it, haven't we?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'd like to see a nice Caribbean island-based horror anthology. That would be great fun. You know, Castaways, Brian Keane vibe, but lots more culture and there'd be kind of it'd be not that Brian doesn't have culture, but what I'm saying is imagine that kind of setting and a ton of authors coming in. That would be great fun.
That would be great.
It's
I think the thing is you see the potential, don't you, with Black Cranes. You know, I've already had Rena Mason's doing the HWA Other Fears anthology. This is her first editing gig, and she's very excited about that. But you know, she's already come back to me with a couple of emails going, oh, you know, since you've done Black Cranes, what about? And you know, her little mind is going, you know, she's reading a lot of her own you know, into her own background and her own heritage, which is Thai Chinese, and investigating, you know, those monsters. And so, you know, I'm excited for her because, you know, we've opened our own understanding of our own heritage and wanting to explore that more. And I've just recently won my first residency, the Grimshaw Sargentson residency. Thank you. But it's a little bit of money, and this is the first time I've won anything, and any kind of New Zealand stipend or anything. I've applied 43 times, and so speculative writing is not is not very well supported by New Zealand funding bodies. So this is a real coup for me. But it's a spin-off from Black Cranes. You know, one of the stories I wrote, I kind of wrote it in a very prose poemy type of way because I think it fitted the story, and that was drawn from my own personal family background. And I thought, I want to explore these ideas more. And then it was also inspired by Rena's story in Black Cranes, which was based on the fox spirit mythology, Chinese, which is really
love that mythology.
So do I absolutely do. But then I thought, well, maybe I could write, a poem narrative of the fox spirit as it changes shape and goes through different lives in order to get itself into that celestial space. I could look at different Chinese women's lives as they come through the New Zealand diaspora. So I thought that
stunning.
I'm excited about it. I'm really excited.
You've got me already on that. I like that.
I'm also that horror theme. You know, I looked into some of the past papers in New Zealand and some of the stories based around Chinese women and their isolation and their otherness. They're absolutely horrific. There's one story about a woman, this is a true story, in the newspaper about a woman who sliced her baby in two. And now I don't know why, but I'm interested in exploring the why would a woman feel so traumatized that she would slice her baby in two. You know, I mean, just with a meat cleaver. Now that's horror to me, but it's derived from real life. So I'm, you know, that poor woman, just what must have she been going through? So so I'm interested in exploring that, and of course that whole mental health aspect, which I myself suffer from anxiety and depression, and so I'm interested in exploring that a little too, because in Chinese culture, you know, we don't talk about mental health. That's a loss of face, and so So again, that's another aspect that I'm interested in exploring. So yeah.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
but these,
It sounds great.
yeah,
I
so these
mean,
kind of things really kind of bounce, you start with one thing and then woof, we're off to somewhere else. Rena's
yeah,
off doing
yeah,
this and I'm doing, and I've moved on to this. And I know a number of the contributors from Black Cranes are saying, we need to expand this, we need to do more, and I think the response to the anthology shows that there is a demand out there for these
of
voices and
course,
these
yeah.
perspectives. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we're running out of time.
Yeah, I think we
So,
are.
shall we say our goodbyes? Thank you, everybody, for listening. And if you've got any questions, just, pop it on the notepad on Patreon or send us an email at Crystal Lake or even tweet us, and we'll be happy to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Theresa. It's lovely to finally
Thank you. It's
meet
been
you.
really nice,
It's been
really
great.
nice.
Thanks so much.
Thank
Bye now.
you. Bye.